V14 is going wide. I've had some mixed reviews, maybe caused a little spiciness with some of my takes. We got Bloom Energy earnings literally as we're recording today, so we'll see how that goes when it comes in, and a lot of other topics to get to. Bradford, how you?
NVIDIA over 200 a share.
Woo! Nearly $5 trillion. Yeah, we are. This is kind of crazy territory. Lots of. I mean, the market is just being extremely strong right now. I think for good reason. But equities are just doing really, really well across the board. Tesla's shown some tremendous strength after earnings last week that were mid. Is it fair to call earnings mid?
Meh.
Meh. All right, that's fine too. So yeah, quite a bit to get into here. But I think maybe we should start off with
I want to speculate why Tesla is rallying, which could kind of open our debate a little bit. So I think Tesla is rallying because Tesla nerds and Tesla bulls are getting their hands on version 14, and they're seeing how good it is, Matt.
You know, so I posted a mildly controversial post about my experiences with V14, which were, I would say, underwhelming. I think is the word that I used, which I think was fair because I mean it definitely did some stuff well, and there was just some stuff that was not very great. And given how much it was kind of hyped up, I think from a lot of people, I was a little bit disappointed. Not like majorly, and I think they're going to sort through all these comfort issues, but it was just not as there as I was expecting it to be. And I saw a lot of people in the replies basically saying, yeah, that was very similar to my experience. And certainly I saw a few others that had like universally positive experiences. So there could be some people that are, just kind of buying Tesla shares on the back of a really good V14 experience. But based on the anecdotal evidence I was seeing from a lot of affirmation of similar experiences to what I'd seen, I'm not buying it.
Dang. Okay. Well, I think we can agree V14 is a bit timid. Yeah, it's very safe, but it's overly timid. It's seeing ghosts. It's staying away from danger. All these things, like even in a totally empty four-way stop, there's this like once it makes the full stop, sometimes it's deciding, do we go or not go. Sometimes when you're approaching or going through an intersection, there might be other cars approaching the intersection quickly, and it's not trusting that those cars are going to stop, even if they are supposed to stop. So it's like tending to get freaked out by things. So overly cautious about when to make turns. You mentioned the car, not making a left turn when there are big gaps during rush hour. So like there's this, but it's like safe. So
yeah,
I think like the most critical thing is safety. Obviously,
100% agree for sure.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't want like hard braking for randoms or casual people in a robo taxi. You don't want hard braking because that can be jarring. But it's okay if you're a little impatient with the taxi driver, don't you think, Matt?
Yeah, I do think so. Maybe. So I had another experience which I'll maybe share just today. So this was after I posted the big post earlier today. But I was just running a real quick errand, like less than a mile away from my house. And it handled this situation extremely well, which was there was a huge line of traffic. It was kind of rush hour, school was getting out, all that sort of stuff. It was getting into the left turn lane because all the traffic was backed up, and I was turning into this parking lot right at the corner of two, busy roads. And then it's like slammed on the brakes. I'm like, oh gosh, what's this? And I see some crazy person is like doing the thing where they cut in front of all the parked traffic to try to like turn left. And so like the car had to literally slam on the brakes, although like I didn't see this person there. So that was a pretty wild experience, but it handled it flawlessly, I would say. And it saw the situation sooner than I did, and like legitimately could have caused an accident. So like, is it safe? 100%. Is it seeing things that I'm not? Yes. Is it still doing things that are super annoying? Also, yes. And so like, just to give you an idea, in getting back to your point about like, is this ready for like the normies to take on a robotaxi? So leaving that same parking lot, it just took like the most bizarre way I wanted to turn left and then turn left again, like again during rush hour traffic, and the left turn lane that I needed to turn into in order to turn left again was just like way backed up. So it was like very clear there was no chance to just turn left. And
Mhm.
I sat there and let it wait for like, I don't know, very close to a minute. And then I was like, this is just not going to clear up. And it would like a much more natural thing would have been just to turn right and then turn right again and get home that way. And so but it didn't do that. It didn't like, kind of reroute. So my point in saying like, it's not doing anything unsafe. And in fact, it seems like extremely safe. Like I'm kind of like, that's been one of the most impressive things. But at the same time, it's making decisions that I think would alienate people if they're, expecting like a robo-taxi competitor or something like that at this stage of the game. So that's a very long-winded answer, but I think like my takeaway is it needs some more polishing. I'm very confident they'll get there and probably pretty soon to address some of these things. But like they need to fix routing so that you don't take a dumb way home and unnecessarily just get stuck by traffic. It needs to recognize a situation where like if your traffic is really backed up, you need to like be able to be a bit more aggressive. And then probably the last thing I've seen a lot of people comment is just like how much it speeds. like it's pretty aggressive even on like standard mode. But let me pause my rant there, and I'm curious how that hits you.
So I want to approach it from a different way. Like I think it's much improved in all the ways that matter. So I think it handles various negotiations even better than it did before. I think it's smoother in many different ways. So in roundabouts, it's very smooth going into and choosing the angle and the speed and the roundabout. And there's these dumbbell roundabouts where it looks like this, where it's the roundabouts are above a highway. So it's like, having two traffic lights above the highway. Instead, you have two roundabouts like that. And it used to, version 13 used to fling me from side to side and go a little too fast through those. And now it's just right. Like it's perfect for me. So I'm confident that, given Elon's comments on the earnings call, they're well aware that, it's overly cautious now. And I think they're going to make those tweaks. And we already started to see a reduction in I'll call it the brake fluttering or stuttering. We're seeing a reduction in that already. So that's a good sign that, by 14.2, that it'll improve. Another thing from the earnings call is that we still don't have the 10x parameter count of the much larger model.
Right.
And this was confirmed by Charles Key, who came to Tesla from Waymo. And he said that he was talking about how a lot of these benefits are because of the longer context window. And when we were first starting to see the first day or two of version 14, he was saying there's more for you all to see. Like you're going to see more things, and we did. So I've seen it do a lot of good things, but yeah, there's been some frustrating things. There's one time where my car, and this happened to you too, where my car just decided to stop, or maybe it didn't happen to you, but it happened to someone else.
Yeah, no, I've had the brake feathering, but I haven't had it come to a complete stop.
Yeah. And it wasn't like a hard jarring thing, but I just stopped, and maybe I wasn't looking at the road enough or something, but yeah, it did that. So what's your confidence here that they figure this out like before year end rather than like next summer or something like that, Matt?
Well, I think it's pretty high. We've seen them kind of go through this before where, the first couple dot releases of a major rewrite, if my memory's right, I think V13 was pretty similar where it seemed like it was being programmed to be overly cautious, which is actually what you want to do while your data set is somewhat limited. Like everything's going well in your testing, but what you're going to start accumulating very serious miles. And so if there's some sort of flaw with the system, you'd rather have it sacrifice user comfort to help minimize the probability of an accident. And then once you've got a little bit more data around, how the vehicle is going to behave, then you can maybe try to optimize for the comfort a little bit more than the safety. So I suspect that there's going to be a bit of that type of improvement that comes along. And honestly, I'd expect some pretty serious improvements in the next month or so. So I'm pretty confident that they're gonna get that part sorted. But the other question is,
and so hang on to that for a second. So, we glossed over a lot of improvements. So, parking's one where it's doing a great job parking, whether on a street or in parking lots. Also, navigating parking garages. So like, that's good. Like getting out of people's driveways. You do want to be careful having it get out of your garage. So if you have to turn to get out of your garage, you need to either not let it do that or watch it like a hawk. So there's a lot of improvements that we've seen. Emergency vehicles, seeing it react immediately to those.
And I experienced that. Like that was one of the best things I saw it do. Like the second I saw the fire truck, it like very aggressively but safely pulled over to the side of the road. I was very impressed with that.
Yeah. So what was the next question you had, Matt?
So the other thing I was going to say, where I think it still needs some improvement, is parking. So with a lot of the videos that I'd seen, it looked like this was a major step up, and I think it is a major step up. But still, several times, when I've taken it to a destination, it just kind of like parks like a drunkard or something. Like today when I was pulling into the parking lot, it like there were two spots, and it was kind of like, oh, which spot do I take? And it just kind of like chose the middle, and it was like parked directly on the line, like the tire was over the line a bit. So that like stuff like that needs a bit of improvement. Also, just like the angles as it's reversing and needing to pull forward, it's doing like a 5-point turn when a 3-point turn should suffice, and that sort of thing. Yeah. So some of that sort of stuff needs to be optimized, but again, that's all comfort, not safety. And the few kind of safety incidents I've seen have been like phenomenal. So I suspect they'll get a lot of the data that they need, like to help with regulatory approvals, to say, hey, listen, like, we're getting accidents much more rarely than with humans. And so like that is like the single most important metric by far. And a lot of this other stuff is kind of like nitpicking that they need to fix so that adoption increases. But it's not the sort of thing that has me worried.
Do you think we're going to see Tesla in 5 more cities with Robotaxi by year end?
Yes. Yep.
Safety monitor in Austin, in or out?
Gone. Get out of there.
Wow. Okay. Matt's on Elon time, I guess.
Well, Elon said, at least what was this 3 months ago? Elon said that you and I would be able to do unsupervised FSD by the end of the year. That's like that was always too optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited. I guess, yeah, in Austin, when they're doing in new areas, they probably will have safety monitors. So if they're working on the airport pickup and drop off and the rideshare lot, they'll have the safety monitors for that, not for safety, but more for, is this the correct pickup and drop off, and monitoring that situation. I'm guessing they're working on that already. We have seen Teslas with either safety monitors or the LiDARs in different areas of Austin, like Bee Cave and other areas that they're not in presently. So I think there's potential that they could come out, but they may not be out completely in Austin. I'm wondering how they're going to negotiate that if they're not like all in on a city. Maybe they just keep it geo-fenced for now, and have a way to test with safety monitors in neighborhoods that they're building up. So you also want to test like pickup and drop off around hotels and sporting events, things like that. high traffic restaurants on Main Street, etc.
So do you think they're going to have some sort of robotaxi availability for the shareholder meeting next week?
You mean cybercab or without a safety monitor robotaxi?
Well, I'm thinking cybercab, but I'll give credit for anything other than just like the pure thing. Like if there's some like, hey, are you headed to the shareholder meeting? And if so, like we'll drop you off at the door, by clicking this button or something like that. Because like I think the pickup and drop off piece is one of the things that needs some improvement.
Yeah, I would hope that there's some kind of wow with robotaxi and the shareholder meeting, especially like if it's unsupervised or if they have cyber cabs. I'd be a little disappointed if it's only on Giga Texas property where it's just their private property where they have the cyber cab. But I'd understand it for the cyber cab, but robotaxi. So I'm lucky I got to experience cybercab at We Robot, but there's a lot of people going to the shareholder meeting that didn't get to experience it yet. So, worst case, I hope they offer that, even if it's just on private roads.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm curious what they show as far as Optimus, but my sense is that they're not going to show the new Optimus, or if they do, that maybe he'll have the gloves or whatever on.
Yeah.
So you can't see what the hand is, and so I think there'll be some things that are covered up.
So we have some news dropping live. So Bloom Energy just reported earnings. And let me set the context a little bit for some people who maybe aren't as familiar. Bloom Energy is a company that does fuel cells for electricity generation in stationary applications. So data centers is like the key area that is a real big growth opportunity. So a lot of people have heard of data centers and the kind of constraints that they have actually getting enough power to do all the computations that they need to do to run these AI models and inference needs and everything like that. So they've just been on an absolute tear as a stock recently. Let me see if I can share my screen here for people who aren't as familiar with the Bloom story. All right, should be sharing. Can you see that?
Yeah, maybe you can show 6 month, Matt.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do that. So
it's right below the share price. There you go.
So here's the 6 month. I mean, just a short while ago, it was sub $20. And here we are literally 6 months later. It's at 124 after hours, up 10%. So just a quick look through their financials. And I won't go through this live because it's actually, or I won't share my screen on it because it's a little hard to read. So let me stop my share here. I had it up. Where did it go? I got too many tabs open. Is the problem with doing stuff live. All right. So they increased revenue 57.1% compared to the third quarter of last year of 2024. 55.7% compared to the prior quarter. Gross margin increased to 29.2%, which it was at 26.7%. So they're expanding margin. The thing that is maybe slightly concerning to me is that their operating expenses increased quite a bit. Now you'd expect with some expansion that you'd need to be spending more on operating expenses.
Right.
But historically, they've had just like phenomenal operating leverage. And what we're seeing here is a pretty significant growth in the actually, maybe I can share my screen here just to make it a little easier. Window, here we go. All right, I'll share that. So let me zoom out a tiny bit. So you can see just the tremendous revenue growth here, especially compared to the prior year. But their operating expenses have been like pretty consistent historically, but they really jumped in the last couple of quarters, and there's a big jump this quarter in sales and marketing. Now, if we're going to have a a somewhat significant increase in sales and marketing, but we're getting like $5 billion deals signed, I'm not too concerned about it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it is just a question of how much of the increase in revenue that we're getting is going to be flowing through to the bottom line. So you can see, despite the fact that revenue grew so significantly, year over year and quarter over quarter, GAAP earnings is still negative, which is a big surprise to me, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have thought that their operating expenses would have increased to quite this level. So I think there's a lot to like in here. The revenue growth is what we would kind of expect. They didn't give any forward guidance, at least.
They had a $20 million write down. Looks like operating loss and unconsolidated affiliate.
Yeah,
right in the middle on the white line, a little higher. Equity loss and unconsolidated affiliate.
Yep. Now that's true. And so the adjusted earnings per share, that is positive, and that takes into account some of this stuff. So we've got that down here. So you got positive 15 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another one of the things that we really like in a company, is a company that is going from like roughly break even to, just kind of hitting profitability. So that was one of the things that initially attracted us to Bloom. And now they're definitely very clearly on the path of profitability. And I think it's only going to expand from here, even if their operating expense discipline maybe isn't as good as we'd been hoping for. And I'll reserve judgment on that, because this is literally hot off the press and have not had a chance to fully digest it. But the thing to keep in mind, just taking a step back on, Q3 doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It's a little bit like Tesla in that, this quarter is not what matters. It's the trajectory with FSD. Right. With Bloom, the trajectory is really, okay, you're going from a run rate of maybe 600 megawatts or so, kind of annual deployments. Factory capacity was 1 gigawatt, so it was pretty significantly underutilized. And you're expanding that capacity now to be 2 gigawatts. So think of it as like roughly quadrupling potentially, or maybe more conservatively 3xing output in the next year.
Yeah. So Matt, let me ask you a question here. So if you're producing at 600 gigawatts and megawatts, and your capacity is 1,000 megawatts, why would you increase your capacity to 2,000 megawatts?
Because you have line of sight to demand that is going to be higher than your 1 gigawatt. And you feel confident in making the investments to get you to 2 gigawatts rather than 1.
Mm-hmm. And what might that mean for profits?
They're going up. No, this is the reason that we've invested in it. And we might be talking a little bit out of school yet. We haven't disclosed all of our actions publicly, but we sold out of this name a while ago, just because it had gone on such a tremendous run in such a short period of time.
Yeah. Went from like 20 to 65.
On very little news. So there was an Oracle announcement that didn't have the megawatts specified. And we're like, okay, well, that's a good validation of the technology, but with no megawatts specified, it wasn't clear how big of a deal that would be. Yeah. And then there's this AEP, kind of like Ohio regulatory scheme, which is really good news for them. But again, we hadn't had any official firm deals announced on the back of that. So, we just thought there was a lot of expectation for the stock to roughly triple. And so we sold. Even though we thought the stock was still undervalued, we just thought it was more likely than not that, we'd have some retracement. Shortly after we did that, we had some more announcements. There was a $5 billion deal announced with Brookfield, up to $5 billion, I should say. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, this is a company that is doing like 400 million of revenue on a quarterly basis right now, 519 million this quarter. So like 5 billion is like an absolutely massive amount of order volume for them. And then there was a 900 megawatt deal where the air permit was released that indicated 900 megawatts of production capacity potential for one single project in Wyoming. Now, keep in mind,
that's been underreported. So one Wall Street bank, as far as we know, has talked about it. And really, it hasn't been picked up on. I doubt management will talk about it until the air permit's approved. Wyoming is pretty permissive. Pun intended.
That was good. I almost missed that.
So I'd expect that to go through, but I don't think management is going to comment on it until maybe after that happens. It is with a smaller player, but it is potentially a very big deal.
Yeah, and it's just like these numbers, like you almost have to take a step back to really appreciate it. Because being with Tesla, we hear like, oh, 10 gigawatt hours of energy deployed, and like we're kind of used to it. But like think of this company, which was doing 600 megawatts, like we were saying, and again, they don't disclose this anymore, so we're kind of like roughly estimating, but it's going to be directionally accurate. To get one order, and they're not even using their full 1 gigawatt of capacity. So to get one order that's 900 megawatts, it's like more than an entire year's worth of revenue on one project.
Mhm.
This is in the backdrop of data centers getting massively larger, like 10xing in size, going from like 100 megawatts to 1 gigawatt kind of size, and that being normal, and with line of sight to get to 10 gigawatts. So average order size for all electrical equipment, I think, is going to significantly increase. So you got that.
And all the natural gas turbines, which is a competing technology, are sold out, from all the major players, from like the 9 or so top major players globally. And Bloom has the capacity to bring more natural gas-based electrical generation online.
Yeah. And importantly, it can cite it behind the meter, and it can load follow with a data center. So one of the things people who know about data centers know is like, you might be like running at like maximum output, and then your training run ends, and like the electrical load just drops instantaneously. And so if you've got a 1 gigawatt data center, that it's going from 1 gigawatt to like 400 megawatts, you've got to have technology that can actually handle that level of ramp down. And what Bloom has, which is like really phenomenal, is they've actually built supercapacitors into their fuel cell so that it can handle those instantaneous drops, and then it can actually, the fuel cell itself can ramp down like very quickly in a matter of seconds. But so you can handle the instantaneous drop with the supercapacitors that are built in, and then ramp down without a significant loss in efficiency. When those supercapacitors are drained. So like they've just got such a compelling value proposition that I think we're going to see a lot more use cases and a lot more of these being deployed. So
there's still a role for batteries, but they aren't needed 100% for those quick fluctuations in power.
Yeah, and one of the things I think some of the like Tesla bulls in particular, of which I'm one, so I'm not trying to throw shade, but like people think batteries are the answer to everything. But like you still need to generate those electrons somehow. So like electricity generation is like super critical. And so if we're adding tens of gigawatts, ultimately terawatts of new load in a very short period of time, being invested in companies that are actually capable of generating these electrons in an environmentally friendly way, in a cost-effective way, and in a way where you can do it while avoiding a bunch of these permits. It's just a win-win-win. So that's one of the reasons we love Bloom. And honestly, we've been bullish on them, but we've been a bit surprised by just how quickly this order has flowed in.
Yeah. And then there was a subsequent deal recently where Brookfield, and this is not like a firm order, but Brookfield, and they're an asset manager that one of their assets that they specialize in is AI data centers, or data centers, running and leasing the data centers. So they're more like a real estate, but also infrastructure player. And they commit is the wrong word, but intend to do $5 billion in business with Bloom Energy over the coming years, and essentially name Bloom as their primary source of power moving forward. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think they might be a little bit more known for being an asset operator and developer of energy projects, but I think they are involved in data centers as well. But yeah, like they're something of like a real estate play. Like they've got an essentially an excellent management team that is very good at like developing and managing projects. They hold a fair amount of these on their own balance sheet. They'll develop and sell others. So like they're like a blue chip name in this space. And so there's, it went from this situation a while ago.
And like Oracle starting to test them. So like that's That's significant. If Oracle has a good experience with Bloom, then they'll
Yeah.
likely do more.
Well, in Bloom guaranteed Oracle that their data center would be up and running in 90 days,
Mhm.
which is just wild. So, like that's the kind of brash Elon style guarantee that
Mhm.
I really like to see, as an investor. I was just thinking back, so I did the first video on Bloom about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now.
Right.
And like, at that point, no data centers were using these. They had to deal with Amazon, and Amazon was like dragging their feet, like,
Yeah.
like almost against their will to actually deploy one of these at their data center. And there was this quote from that I included in the video that I put out at the time from this guy who's developed a ton of data centers over a very long career. But he was basically looking around the corner and being like, "Look, this is coming." But the problem is, like, a lot of these data center operators, like, they're very risk averse, and they're very like, okay, well, this is the way that we've done things, and it's always worked this way, so we're going to do this. But when it gets to the point when you literally don't have power, so he actually phrased this so well. It was something like, so you say, hey guys, like, we're going to put a fuel cell in your data center. They're like, oh, we've never done that before. Like, why would we do that? That's crazy, and like, it's not going to work for reasons X, like A, B, C, D. And then all of a sudden, if you say, hey guys, like, we don't have enough power and we can't get any power to site for 5 years, like, help me come up with a solution. Then those same engineers do the work, like, they put their heads together and like, you know what, fuel cells would actually solve this problem. So it's like when the necessity really is the mother of invention, where like when there wasn't a need for these fuel cells, obviously nobody used them. And now that there's like a very massive need, and like everybody's freaking out about where they're going to get their electricity from, all of a sudden a company like Bloom is just exploding in orders. Like, this is, I don't think I can ever think of something in my history as an investor where so many orders, like relative to like a historic baseline, have come in over such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's exciting. I feel like it was an Oracle moment that happened when Brookfield, had their announcement. So we'll see what happens. Curious if they update their guidance for the rest of the year. What kind of quarter are they having this quarter so far? How do they think the year is going to finish up? And then doubt they'll update next year's guidance. Curious if they talk about orders, or what next year is going to look like, or backlog, or some things like that, to give people a sense of like what's firm versus not. We'll see what we get on the call with Bloom Energy.
Well, something that is interesting on that front. So
It is. I will say one more thing. Like, Bloom is a momentum stock now.
yeah.
So like, people have caught on to the idea. I don't think the momentum players, they just see the stock going from 20, all the way up to over 100 now. It's almost like it seems like a perfectly smooth curve. But they don't know anything about the company. They don't know that capacity is 1 gigawatt, and soon may be going to 2 gigawatts. So they don't know any of that. So I'm curious if they stay after earnings or if they just bail.
Yeah, you and I were speaking earlier today, and like the one thing we were expecting was volatility. Like, we basically didn't expect the stock price to stay where it was, because it's in pure price exploration mode right now, and it's rallied a lot ahead of these anticipated new orders. But these new orders haven't really made their way into the financials yet, so it's a little bit in story stock territory. Now they've got a phenomenal story, and we believe it will materialize into like true earnings and cash flow and all those metrics that matter. But like what that looks like in 2026 and 2027, everyone is kind of throwing darts on the wall right now to look at that. And then coming back to your point about guidance. So they typically do either reaffirm or make some adjustments to their guidance. So I was just looking in their Q2 press release, and they reaffirmed the full year 2025 guidance, and laid out exactly what that is. The Q3 press release, which they just dropped, is totally silent on guidance, which is interesting. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I mean, the question is just whether they're raising it or not. And I think the fact that they didn't reaffirm it or provide updated guidance, the way I would interpret that is it's going to be good. We don't know exactly how many orders are going to drop in Q4 versus in January. And so we're just going to focus on executing in the long term. And, when we have a better view on guidance, that's we'll let you know. That's my if I could be Bloom's IR for a second, that would be my expectation of how they handled that.
Maybe they say at least. That's their guidance for the fourth quarter. It's going to be at least this amount.
Someone's going to ask them for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting.
You should try and sneak on the call, see if they let you in.
All right, I might try to do that.
I think there's someone in HR that knows who you are. So,
well, it was actually kind of funny. When I was talking to the head of IR. Were you on that call with their head of IR? Yeah, and he's relatively new. He's like, oh yeah, like when I was interviewing for the job, I watched your video on it. I was like, oh cool. So I do feel like we've helped the company in some small ways, just with what we've done. So that's always
they'll probably exclude us because they don't want to get the Wall Street people mad. But we'll see if you can get on and ask some questions. All right. So let's talk about an Amazon bestseller.
Are you an author?
Occasionally. I'm not a words person, which is the crazy thing. So I'm gonna add this to the stage. So I was a contributing author to this book. I wrote a chapter about AI, and essentially what I talk about in the book is that let me try this other view here, make it even bigger. There we go. Embiggenify. Yeah. Is that I believe businesses should adopt large language models and AI automation in their business as much as possible, so you can get ready for the disruption that's going to happen. As we move toward AGI, if that becomes a thing, or just more agents, where agents are taking over more human roles. You need to be ready. So like if you're totally doing nothing, if you haven't even started the race, or you're not really getting that value out of your business, maybe you can't. Maybe it's not the type of business where maybe you don't use computers. Maybe you don't have spreadsheets. And go ahead, Matt.
Well, I think that's a hilarious, kind of caricature of people who wouldn't adopt AI. But I think like maybe a more realistic scenario would be somebody's not the business owner like you are. Somebody doesn't have the authority to make the types of changes that they want to make. I think you could have situations like that where the company culture is a roadblock to truly implementing the tools that you need to make the change that's needed.
Yeah, so got a question here. Where are we at? Okay, here we go. Do you think the nonprofit sector should be all in on AI? I do. So like a lot of nonprofit work is like coordination with donors, coordination with volunteers, grant writing. So you can monitor like all the grants that are out there. There's probably databases. You can have AI help you automate those database searches and to know like, okay, what's a new grant that was just approved or submitted, however that worked. But also like really understanding your donors in a way. I think it's really easy as a charity to annoy your donors. Like there's those places where you donate once, and these organizations are notorious. And you donate once, and you're on their literal mailing list, where you get a piece of mail from them on a weekly basis, maybe even multiple times a week, where they're asking you for more money, and there's a supposed donor match, and if you donate, you get 3 times your money, and the kids are dying and whatever, without your dollar. So like, I think it's really easy to burn out your donors. So like, if you can do it in a way that's more impactful, and nurture those relationships over time, I think it can be a higher value that you can deliver. What are your thoughts there, Matt?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think I've seen some back office infrastructure for several nonprofit organizations, and I think kind of across the board, it's less sophisticated than their private sector cohorts.
Mhm.
And so all the more, that's an opportunity to kind of streamline processes. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a sector of the economy, honestly, that is not going to be affected by this. I've been thinking a little bit about like how to prepare my kids for it and like what the future is going to look like. Yeah, I think there are going to be um, some sectors that are a little bit more robust. And like one thing I was thinking is like I think it's gonna be very hard for AI to like be a Michelin level chef or something like that, because like
Right.
you're not gonna have the same sensory inputs and like experience on how does the food make you feel. So I think kind of like artisan level stuff like that, and even like handmade artisan stuff, where you just like you know how to make Damascus steel or whatever because you've been doing it. Like I think there's like all these little niches like that which are going to be very hard for AI to get like master level at. So I think there's going to be opportunities like that for people who want to find work like that in the future. But for like the vast majority of work and nonprofit work, I think you need to be leaning into this. But let's come back to the book a little bit. We've been speaking a lot about generics, but this seems to be like a Rebellionaire heavy and Tesla heavy, Tesla like content creator heavy
Yeah.
book. So how did this
Yeah.
come about?
Got Larry Goldberg, Bradford Ferguson, Brian White, Brian Long, Randy Kirk, Dr. Know-It-All, John Gibbs. Nick Gibbs is not a Rebellionaire contributor, but we've been on podcasts with him. Phil Beisel, who was with Rivian for some time and in their consumer electronics and vehicle architecture, and Cern Basher, who offers services that are similar to us, all contributors. So Randy and Brian approached me and asked me to write a chapter, and I was able to choose the chapter that I want to write on. And because I've been working on, I've been working on using AI in our business, and we hired a full stack developer, a programmer to use agentic AI to quickly automate things. So I have some experience in implementing it for my business, but I'm also doing agentic AI coding myself. So what I was working on yesterday was a system to fetch YouTube transcripts and to clean up the transcripts and summarize them, and to do it in a way that's automated. So that's a big time saver where there's a lot of videos that I'm interested in, but they could be like an hour long or 30 minutes long. So it's like a too long didn't watch type deal, and that can save me a lot of time if I end up using that. But that was just like a test case where today I was making a program to help us monitor news and be up on the latest news, and so I'm just starting that work and working through the first steps of it. And what's cool is you can just iterate with the agentic AI coder. So I use Claude Code, and so like there's different steps, and you have it write the code, it'll run the code, and then it'll you can give it feedback and say what went well, what didn't, and then it can make adjustments, and then you move on to the next step. But then you can keep trying the whole stack of all the scripts that you need to run the program. You can keep trying that over and over and iterate through any issues it runs through, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have a junior programmer, but like the junior programmer is doing all the coding for me. Like I'm more like the architect, here's what I'm wanting, but I'm not looking at how it's designed the code or the logic flow of the code. I'm more telling it, what I want it to do. And I'm also like pulling the reins back on it, because like Claude Code likes to write lots of code. Like it's motivated to write lots of code. So I got to rein it back at times.
Yeah, that's something I've certainly noticed too. Like a lot of times when I'm, kind of like almost thinking through an idea and like trying to, get feedback or figure out how best to frame a particular project that I'm working on. ChatGPT or whichever agent I'm working with will just be like, all right, let me solve this problem for you. And then like it tries
Mhm.
to go like straight to a deliverable instead
Yeah.
of, taking some interim steps to like make sure that what it's giving you is exactly what you want. So I think that
Yeah.
reining back process is key.
So a critical best practice right there, and Claude Code is great at this. Claude can do it too. Is you can have it you describe the problem, and it thinks it knows where you want to go with it, but you can have it create a questionnaire on different decision points.
Hmm.
So like write me
That's a great
10
idea.
10 questions with multiple choice, and maybe one where I can write in my own answer. Ask me one question at a time, progressively through the issues. So these different choices. So with the news monitor, do we only do English articles?
Hmm.
Is it only U.S. or do we also do England, Germany, and China or whatever? So what are you can have it take you through these different decisions, and also you can have it help you give context for what those decisions would mean, and
Yeah.
then you can test them over time and be like, oh, no, I didn't like that one. Let's back off of that filter or whatever. So it can help you think through the problem more quickly too, just by having it ask you questions.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great unlocks, and like if I'm pulling one common thread from everything that I've heard you talk about here, it's like you just need to start like whatever it is in your business that like is a pain point. Just
Yeah.
start trying to implement AI because a couple things are going to happen. One, you're going to up your own skill set and start learning how to think of attacking problems in a different way. Two, you're
Mhm.
going to start getting a lot more productive. You're going to be able to get more throughput done. And then three, you're going to kind of stay on top of these changes that are coming. I mean, the rate of improvement of these AI, agents or chatbots, whatever, we want to call them right now is just so high that if you want to kind of remain relevant in the workforce, I think you have to get out there, start experiment and just be a doer with them. So you're going to kind of stumble through and it'll make some mistakes, but then like I've had these moments where like it comes up with something that it's just like, oh my gosh, I never would have even thought to do that. And you get a
Mhm.
much better product than you would get on your own if you were doing it the way that your job has always been done.
Yeah, exactly. It's a force multiplier for me, and yeah, I do have a programmer already, but he's busy on other projects. Like we got over a dozen projects now, different proof of concept, minimum viable products, but some we've already pushed to our team. We're getting feedback from like the non early adopters. So like
Mhm.
the people who are front lines for our business at Halter Ferguson, of which Rebellionaire is a brand. Um, we're getting feedback from them. They're giving feedback to the developer, and they're using it. So we're iterating on multiple different projects along the way.
Good stuff. All right. So AI's doing great at Halter Ferguson. Tesla's doing awesome with their AI. Bloom Energy is powering AI. Let's talk about another one of the companies in our portfolio, Lemonade. So they've got
Mhm.
earnings next week. But Daniel Schreiber, the co-founder and CEO, had an interview that dropped, which had some pretty interesting
Yeah.
nuggets. Then that dropped on Friday. Then yesterday, the stock was up 12% on no news, just kind of steadily throughout the day. What's going on here? And I'm curious, is this just the start? Is this just a, buy the rumor, sell the news? What do you think's happening?
I think it was a continuation of Bulls seeing this interview that dropped. And what was really exciting about the interview, and I'm going to get this to, um, I'm going to get this to our thing is, um, so Matt, maybe you could talk about how with a car insurance, there's this huge cross sell opportunity, but they really weren't pushing on it. until recently, and maybe talk about why that cross-sell opportunity is important. Like, how much it typically costs to gain a car insurance customer.
Yeah, so I think you and I had a conversation with Daniel maybe a year and a half ago or something like that, and he was very bullish on car at the time, and he basically said that in 2025 they were going to start really pushing it. What we saw in Q1 and into Q2 was that like there really wasn't significant growth. I mean, there was certainly some growth in car, but very limited kind of launch. And so when we were speaking with the management team, after that, we're like, why? Like you've got to, you told us on the investor day that there's a 700,000 customer wait list on car. Why aren't you, like hammering that wait list as much as you can, at least within the states where you've already launched car to try to get those cross sell? Because those are essentially free customers. So rather than pay several $100s to acquire a car customer, like you can pick up some for free essentially. And I think we didn't really get a great answer on that other than, the board wasn't like a huge fan of this strategy, the particular strategy where they were that they'd proposed, and so they were kind of holding off. Now, and at the time, loss ratios weren't as good as they are now, and so maybe that can kind of play into it. But to our mind, it was like you got this like pile of free money where you can pick up these highly valuable customers essentially for free just by cross selling like a pet and renters insurance customer you have that's maybe paying $200 a year. All of a sudden, if you can get them paying $1,800 a year as a car customer, like that's just like such a no-brainer. So it seems like you'd want to do as much of that as possible. But they hadn't really been pushing on that too hard. Then in this interview, do you want to take it from here about what Daniel said, or should I keep going?
Yeah, so it's $450 on average per customer to get a new car insurance customer. So that typically means about $450 in ads that you have to push out to get those customers. So I think we got the clip now, so we're just going to add it to the stage.
Classic entry point for us. But 50% of our car policies are being sold to existing customers. And that is such an expensive customer acquisition segment. Geico pays a fortune to acquire customers. For us, 50% of our customers are coming to us at negative CAC. We acquired them for an insurance policy that's cheap and cheerful like renters. That's profitable. So they've paid for themselves, and then they buy a car policy without us having to spend another
And the
dime.
LTV is just shooting.
Renters is a...
So let me describe what that means. So
makes me tingle inside.
Yeah, so free, it would be zero, where your cost of customer acquisition is zero.
Yeah, so what he said, CAC, a negative CAC, he said. The CAC is customer acquisition cost.
Yeah, so a negative CAC would mean you're getting paid to acquire the customer. So what did they mean by this? Well, what they mean is Lemonade on a gross profit basis already is profitable doing pet and renters insurance. They do that profitably, but their overall business expenses cause them to be run at a loss for now. But they're kind of like Tesla, where they have this fixed overhead with R&D, and they're powering into this new area where their overall scale is going to overpower the balance sheet and turn them into profits. We believe, and this is something that you can calculate. So if you have these profitable pet and renters customers, and you get car insurance customers from them for free, essentially you're getting paid to add those car insurance customers. So like you're going to want to grow your pet and renters insurance more, and maybe you could start to run those closer to a break even if they see a difference in how the cost to acquire the customer and how profitable they are, with the idea that you're going to cross sell them into car insurance. Because $450 in savings per customer to acquire them as a car customer, that's substantial.
Yeah. Well, in that point at the end that the interviewer said is like, and LTV is exploding. Let's unpack that piece of it a little bit too. So LTV is the customer lifetime value. So if you imagine all of your customers as having like a stream of cash flow, so they pay you money into the expected useful life of how long you expect they'll stay with you. And then at some probability we'll have a claim in a certain number of years. And so over significant cohorts of customers, you can kind of average out what that looks like. And so for their existing small customers that are doing like a pet policy or a renter's policy, the average customer lifetime value might be $300. So maybe you acquired that customer for $100, but on a present value basis, they're worth $300. So like that's great. And that's a really nice book of business. Well, then all of a sudden, if that same customer then upgrades to a car policy, well, then it might be the case that your lifetime value on that stream, like maybe it jumps from $300 to $2,000. I mean, it's just such a significant increase in the value that like your customer economics, like overnight, essentially, as you can unlock this cross-selling, go from like being like good but small to like good but large. and so this is why we're getting really excited about what the future has in store, and possibly why the stock rallied 12% on no like new news, is people are starting to do this math and being like, okay, wait, like that means you're going to be acquiring a lot of business at very low cost. Which we already know Tesla has, or Lemonade has, phenomenal operating leverage. So like good chunk of that's going to drop straight to the bottom line. And then one other piece,
and if they're free to acquire, there's no hit to the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
and they're immediately accrete to profits. You get your first month of premium, provided that your loss ratio is like, let's say 80% or so. That profit's going to fall to the bottom line.
Yeah, it's such a good business model. And I think management has historically been very conservative, which for an insurance company, you sort of want them to be, but one of the things that we asked them about was, okay, well, like your customer lifetime value, so that, for that, your existing customer, that $300 lifetime value calculation, they never assumed
the 3-to-1, like, so like 300 in lifetime value to 100 in cost of acquisition. Yeah.
So for the majority of the customers that they already have, they didn't assume any cross-sell car for, because they didn't have historical data to back that up. Now they're getting that historical value. And so they might be realizing that the lifetime value of a pet customer, because some percentage of them are going to cross-sell into car, maybe instead of $300, maybe it's $500, maybe it's $600. And so then that changes the dynamics of how much you can afford to spend to acquire these other customers, because now you've actually got like good, reliable data on how many of them are cross-selling. And we're such at the early stage of this, because car is still such a small part of their overall business. It's only now getting to the point where like the loss ratios, the profitability is getting to be where they want it. And so now it's just like, let's hit the gas and see how many of these we can sell. And I think the market is probably going to be a bit surprised at Lemonade's growth for the next several quarters.
So I want to underline what's created this opportunity. And there's a lot of factors, but specifically on this whole customer acquisition cost and lifetime value, but also legacy insurance. So Wall Street, they've totally taken for granted that there's a cost of customer acquisition. So for Lemonade, they're not yet profitable. When they spend money on ads, that hits their bottom line in a bad way. It subtracts from the bottom line right away. So 100% of it, the acquisition cost gets expensed immediately. And then the lifetime value accrues over time. But like all these Wall Street analysts have totally like forgotten, like that's how all insurance companies gain clients now, like with ads. So with, a chunk of insurance, maybe you pay an insurance person over 7 years, that could be a little different, but a lot of insurance, the insurance agent gets paid up front. So like it penalizes your bottom line right away. But because all these other legacy companies have been around so long, they've forgotten like how that works. So I think that's created the opportunity, and there's complexity to it. Like, what Tesla nerd has heard of customer acquisition costs before? Like at most, we've heard about net promoter score. Tesla has a great net promoter score, but you haven't heard about those things, or like churn, lifetime value of a customer. We haven't heard about these things as Tesla nerds. So like that complexity is a barrier for people understanding it as an investment and being comfortable with it.
The other thing I'd say, which is maybe a little spicy, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Like, I think that complexity, meaning like the people in the industry who know LTV and who know CAC, they know all these terms, like that becomes a barrier for them to take Lemonade seriously, because their way of understanding what an insurance company is doesn't make room for the type of growth that Lemonade is experiencing. It makes them overly focused on things like book equity, which is not like a super relevant metric for a company that's growing super fast and incurring GAAP losses. So it really is this space where there's a decent barrier to entry from like curious, smart people, because you got to learn all this stuff, and it's insurance. It's admittedly less sexy than like self-driving cars and robots. So there's that going against it. And then the people who are experts, kind of dismiss what they're doing because they know this space so much, and they know too much for their own good. I've seen this a lot, where like all the incumbent car companies thought what Tesla was doing was super dumb because they knew all about manufacturing, and they knew the right way to do this and why gigacasting is not going to work. So I think you got that same dynamic at work here in the insurance space as well.
Yeah, I remember the Bob Lutz interview from 2019. It's like August or September of 2019. Tesla has no tech advantage. No car advantage, no advantage whatsoever, no battery advantage, nothing whatsoever. And today, Tesla is the only profitable maker of electric vehicles, full electric vehicles that I'm aware of. Even like BYD, I think doesn't even make their full BEVs at a profit. They make the hybrids at a profit, but I don't think they make the full ones at a profit. So we've gone over a little bit. There might be a little something brewing with Lemonade and Tesla. Lemonade's already delving into the Tesla fleet API, checking out how can they bill people per mile and give them credit for miles on FSD. Not getting a ton of great reviews from that as far as what people are getting for pricing on a per mile. But I think that's going to improve over time as Lemonade learns more about it. So maybe Lemonade ends up insuring the robotaxi service for Tesla, or in certain states. Curious, what happens with that. Anyways, I'm Bradford Ferguson. He's Matt Smith. He's the brains of the operation, and we're with rebellionaire.com. Thanks to Farzad for the simulcast, and I'm going to say bye for now.
Bye-bye.